Andrew Urquhart with you onto the program today. The work of Barnabas Aid, they do fantastic stuff in many different parts of the world, particularly focusing in on places where it's difficult and dangerous to be a Christian, which is the focus of the work, the persecuted church, as it were, and a particular prayer focus for people in many different parts of the world, including, it seems, Australia. Stephanie Johnston's just returned back from Australia. Kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time there.
Kia ora. Just a quick little hop over the ditch, that's all.
And not necessarily the Persecuted Church of Australia, but a bit of a conference.
No.
What sort of stuff were you involved with, Stephanie?
We did a women's conference over there called One Love, which is pretty big conference. About 1,500 women attended at the Hillsong's campus in Sydney.
Yep.
So it was a really, really good conference, actually. I enjoyed it.
No, it sounds really good indeed. Now, another part of the world, and honestly, this couldn't be much more different, apart from the fact that they both, the names of the country both start and end in A, and there's desert in parts of both countries. But apart from that, very little similarity. Today, focusing in on the North African country of Algeria.
Yeah. Algeria is an interesting place. It's kind of smushed in between Morocco and Tunisia. So It's kind of up there, bigger country, African country, but mostly Arab ethnicity in Algeria. So it's quite interesting. And the population of Christians is really low. You're talking about 98% Muslim. And I think the total count of Christians is around 160,000. So very, very small population of Christians in Algeria.
Now, this is part of the world, was part of the French colonial empire in North Africa, I understand. That's part of the history?
Yeah, so they speak a lot of French, a lot of Arabic there. And so it's a big cultural part of their country for sure. And, in the context of the persecuted church, you've got a community called the Berber community.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where most of the Christians come from. And then a lot of Christians there are converted from Islam. So,
which in itself is, a dangerous thing to be in many different parts of the world. What, in terms of legislation, is freedom of religion and freedom to convert to Christianity, is that protected from a legislative point of view in Algeria? Do you know?
It is. It's kind of one of those mixed bags, though, because it's not illegal to be a Christian or to convert from Islam. However, if you share your faith with a Muslim, you could end up spending about 5 years minimum in prison. Wow. So just for talking about Jesus, you can go to jail. So and there's a lot of, even though it is, for a free country in that regard, the law, there's a lot of different bits and pieces to the law. So, for example, in regards to churches, there's about 7 churches that remain open.
Wow.
And then also just in regards to preaching and things like that, it's really tricky to do that. So I can't imagine living in a country where I couldn't share my faith freely like that. Like it's one thing to be able to go to church. I mean, I think that's amazing to have that opportunity. But I mean, here you could just shout from the rooftops if you want. If you're in a cafe, you could do whatever you want here. You don't have to worry about that. You might get some weird looks, but even just sharing with a friend or a family member could cost you prison sentence. So it's interesting. And a lot of the pressure for Christians comes from their families, comes from the government. And so what that means is you've got a lot of pressure from your family to renounce your faith. Yeah. And that would be really hard as well. Just living in that context where your family's constantly harassing you for believing in Jesus is really hard to be a Christian there.
Yeah, no, very difficult. In terms of the work of Barnabas Aid, now you do different work in different parts of the world depending on the context and depending on what the need is. Is there a particular focus that you have for Algeria in terms of the work that Barnabas Aid does there?
Yeah, project-wise, if we had any projects in Algeria, they would be not publicly known. So in regards to that, I can't really share anything.
Okay. Yep.
I think with Algeria, our biggest thing is prayer and praying for the persecuted church. And it's interesting because even though they're persecuted there and they face a lot of harassment, the Christian community is quite strong. And, one thing I wanted us to think about as listeners, as people in New Zealand, as brothers and sisters of these Algerian Christians, is they have one church group that will rotate in prayer and fasting. So they take a day of the week and they pray and fast.
Okay.
And then on Saturdays, they all pray and fast.
Wow.
And what I was thinking is how cool that would be for us to join with them, take one Sunday or one Saturday and pray and fast specifically with the Algerian Christians. So I'm going to start doing that. Saturday is a really hard day to pray and fast, in my opinion, because it's like the day that if I'm going to go out to eat somewhere or go on a date night with my husband, it's usually a Saturday night. So it's a big undertaking to do that. But I feel like that's what the Christians there need from us, is to join with them. And hopefully someday we get to tell them that there are Christians in New Zealand who are actually praying with them on a Saturday. And fasting.
Yeah, that's a wonderful challenge because, as you say, the churches in Algeria, they do one day each because there's only 7 churches in Algeria. Here in New Zealand, I'm sure we've got more than 365 churches. So we could do like one day a year, but I really do like the idea of joining with them for Saturday. Making Saturday a prayer day for the people of Algeria or for Muslim people around the world and even in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be an awesome undertaking for us in New Zealand. And yeah, you're right. 7 churches, we can definitely do that easily.
Yeah.
It's just the whole idea of prayer and fasting, I think, blocks a bit of people from doing that. But man, with this kind of challenge, I think it's a really cool thing to start doing. Are you going to do it, Andrew?
Look, I will prayerfully consider that as an option, and certainly praying for the persecuted church more generally, because Stephanie, I know the challenge you've got. If you go, okay, I'm going to take one day a week and I'm going to pray for Algeria. Well, there's so many countries that Barnabas Aid supports that if you took one day to pray for each country, you'd run out of days in a week, honestly. But there is a wonderful resource that you have available, which covers, is it around 40 countries in the booklet, different parts of the world, different prayer needs?
Yeah, so I'll show it just because of, we're on, some people can see this, but this is our prayer resource, and it's called Praying for the Suffering Church. It goes through 24 and 2025, and it's about 47 days of prayer total. So you've got about 40 different countries that we pray for, Algeria being one of them, and then also specific things like converts from Islam, women, pastors and evangelists. So there's some other more general things in there to pray for. But about 41 different countries.
So, that's a resource where you could be praying for the persecuted church every day of the week. There's a specific focus for each day, but perhaps building fasting into that on a weekly basis. Is that what you're recommending?
Yeah, I think the challenge for the Algerian church with this Saturday thing, they pray every Saturday. They do the prayer and fasting thing every Saturday. I think if we committed to one day to pray and fast one Saturday, I think that would mean the world to them. And then if we, pray for each country, you can do that however you want to do it. And then the one thing that I love about Barnabas Aid is that we really do offer some great prayer resources. Yeah. If you get our magazine or if you subscribe to us online, you get the prayer, an everyday prayer that you can pray 365 days a year. So, and I think that's one thing that as we have a heart for the persecuted church, as people in New Zealand, but sometimes we don't know how to pray. Yeah. So I think doing either one of those options or both of those options is a great start for us to start to really commit to praying for our brothers and sisters who are struggling.
Certainly being informed about some of the challenging situations they're facing, but then not being overwhelmed by that and saying, hey, how can we respond? Well, prayer's a very good place to start. Of course, details about this both online and those physical resources you were talking about beforehand, those prayer booklets. barnabasaid.org is the place to go for more information. I'm certainly going to be prayerfully considering giving up cafes on a Saturday morning. The Stephanie Challenge, let's call it. Steph, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.